Hi everyone, and welcome back to Open Your Eyes to the Universe. I'm Gabrielle Martin, your host for this evening. If you're joining this program for the first time, Open Your Eyes to the Universe is a series of contemporary talks, conversations, open-eyed meditations, and interviews with people who inspire and uplift others by sharing their wisdom, their insights, and their experiences to co-create a better world. Now, as we begin, the Youniverse team would like to acknowledge Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples as the traditional custodians of the land upon which we meet. We pay our respects to the elders of the past, the present, and the future, and acknowledge their spiritual connection to country. We also acknowledge and respect the wise elder within all of us and the collective wisdom of all of those here this evening. Thanks for joining. Last month on Youniverse, we were in the company of Canadian broadcaster, journalist, and filmmaker Eric Larrest for a conversation on diversity and inclusion. Eric, as you recall, has an applied appreciation of this topic. And during the conversation, we checked in with current understandings and practices of diversity and inclusion, and then we explored what it looks and feels like through a spiritual lens. We identified how a spiritual gaze assists us practically in really appreciating and respecting diversity, and moreover, improving our practice of inclusion, bridging the gap between diversity and inclusion collectively and systemically. Well, tonight, here we're in the very special company actually, of professional dancer, Associate Professor Jaime Redfern, based in Brisbane, Australia. And he's joined by dance and fitness instructor Judi from Calgary in Canada. Now, their topic is movement and meditation. Now, does that sound just a bit too much like a contrast for you? I know that many of us associate meditation with stillness and movement with action. But actually, is meditation and movement really a polar opposite? Well, hold off that thought for a moment, because Jaime and Judi will be exploring the connection between the inner world and the process of dance and movement. It's no secret to any of us that regular exercise promotes health throughout the body and the mind. There's a lot of research, and it routinely shows that routine physical activity can improve cardiovascular health, strengthen bones and muscles, and even reduce the risk of certain cancers. And it can also strengthen your brain. And I know most of us would know from experience that movement is vital to our physical health and mental well-being, whether that's a 20-minute, 30-minute walk, 60-minute run, a swim, a workout at the gym, or anything that increases our heartbeat and raising a sweat, a good dig in the garden even. But that surge in endorphins and serotonin is the resulting happy high, the happy vibe where the body is relaxed and the mind is refreshed and clear. So Jaime and Judi are, if you like, movement experts. They're dancers, and they know from experience the way the mind influences the body and how the body influences the mind. And tonight, they share with us their insights that they've gained about the interplay between the emotional landscape and the physical, about the body-soul connection from their careers in the world of dance. So Jaime and Judi, it's lovely to have you both with us tonight. Thanks for joining us, and a very warm welcome to Down Under.
Thank you, Gabrielle. Thank you very much. Happy to be here.
Yeah, lovely to see you, Jaime. And I think we'll get a glimpse of Judi there as well.
Thank you, Gabrielle. I'm delighted to join you from over here in Canada.
Isn't it amazing? Other sides of the world, and it's such a great thing to be able to connect up internationally so easily.
I'm in here yesterday, actually. I'm in here yesterday.
Yeah, it's remarkable. Well, look, let me take a moment to just to introduce more fully Jaime to you, because he's going to kick off. He's our first speaker. So Jaime brings to our conversation a rich career in movement. He began his dance journey at age 7 when he was the only boy in the local ballet classes. And he comments that from this young age, he was clear that he would be a dancer. He loved movement. And after graduating from the Australian Ballet School, Jaime's continued to enjoy a professional dance career for over 40 years. He danced firstly with the Australian Ballet and Queensland Ballet, and lastly with Australia's award-winning contemporary dance theatre company, Expressions, now ADC, the Australian Dance Collective, for over 20 years. Jaime studied his first Masters in Fine Arts at Queensland University of Technology in Brisbane, majoring in choreography, and has created extensively with original dance works from dance companies, tertiary institutions, and for arts festivals. Jaime spent the latter part of his dance career as an educator and collaborator, and during that period, he studied for a second Masters in education at the University of Hong Kong, focusing on collaborative alliances, rigorous dancing, and research in dance. Now, Jaime's wide and diverse experience as a professional dancer and teacher of the next generation of dance professionals has afforded him a unique insight and opportunity to lead in the development of dance within tertiary institutions over an 18-year period. Firstly, as the head of dance at LaSalle College of the Arts in Singapore, it's now part of Singapore University, and then as the head of contemporary dance at the Hong Kong Academy for Performing Arts. Jaime began meditation early in his career at the age of 21, and this practice developed into a parallel pathway that has informed much of his approach to movement, artistic development, and educational leadership over the course of his career and his life. Jaime, what a formidable career, and it's still going. Wonderful, amazing. We'd love to hear more about what you have to share on movement and meditation.
Thank you, Gabrielle. It does sound like a little bit of a long story, but when you live it, it doesn't feel like it's taking up that much time. As you said in the beginning, you know, I as a young boy, I'm quite surprised that I was so clear about what I was going to do. I saw a group that came to my primary school, and they performed for us. They did music and dance and drama. So it was a very sort of eclectic thing. And I do remember I got to go up on stage and do a little bit of audience participation at the end. And I think I played the triangle or something. But within that show, there was a demonstration of what ballet was. And for no sort of reason that I can truly understand, I went home to my mother and I said, that's what I want to do. And she was very she was concerned that I was confused about what ballet was, because there was no conversations about ballet at home. My other two brothers were sort of doing other things. It wasn't part of our world at all. And I said, no, ballet is what I want to do. And thankfully, she took me along to a local school, and the teacher said, look, we only have girls in the class here. He might feel a little bit uncomfortable, but let him watch, and then we'll see if he still wants to join. And after the class, I said, okay, so when can I start? And I just started like that. I really enjoyed you just jumping around to music. I think, I gained a lot of support there as well. Predominantly surrounded by women, but incredibly supportive of what I was doing. And there were, as I moved through, there were sort of challenges with me continuing as a young male dancing, for sure, and particularly as I moved into a more self-aware or self-conscious stage in my life through early teenagers and years and those things. That became a bit more of a challenge, for sure. But it was just something that I had a very clear idea about, and but still to this day I don't know why that happened. It was just it rung true for me. Yeah.
And wonderful that you followed your heart.
Yeah, it is. It's lovely to find something, and I've got two kids of my own, and of course you you love to see that they can find something that they enjoy, and as a parent now, that's the thing that brings you the most joy, is when you see your own kids find that activity, that focus in their life that they just love doing. Because when you can find something like that, you can start to lose yourself in it to an extent. But in losing yourself in it, you grow so much, because you just sort of it becomes a really happy and joyous focus in your life. And I think it opens up lots of opportunities to learn about yourself and to learn about other people that you're working with. And it's a lovely thing to be able to do something that you love and to achieve at it, to sort of get better at it. Yeah. So that as I moved through, as you said, the teenage years were challenging, but I was successful in getting into the Australian Ballet School, which was lovely. And that was a great experience for me, because I was surrounded by a whole group of other people that were like-minded. And it brought a lot of sort of I guess solace and satisfaction in what I was doing, that it was also something that was part of a lot of other people's lives. And I think that it gave me an opportunity to really explore dance at a much deeper level, to start to get into it. It was a full-time school. We were working every day, 6 days, 5.5 days a week. And along with that, we had some additional sort of co-curricular classes, which were which I really enjoyed, which was Tai Chi. And the Tai Chi teacher was fantastic. He was a very old man in his body, but his spirit was beautiful and young, and he had virtually no teeth in his mouth. But what he would say through the interpreter is that my tongue is very supple and it will last for as long as this body lasts, but my teeth are brittle and they will break and fall out. So the idea was that if we keep the body supple, it will last a long time. If we keep the body supple, then it will continue to serve you and be able to sort of be that partner for you. And that was a really sort of deep impression for me in those early days, and I think probably led me towards a more sort of another search, which was, as you mentioned in the intro, sort of parallel pathway, as I started to inquire more about things beyond the body that affect the body, and the Tai Chi certainly introduced me to a more meditative state, and the experience of that, and then slowly I guess I progressed towards finding meditation, and then upon finding meditation, it was really as you said, a parallel pathway for me through my career with dance.
If I could jump in, Jaime, there was just a couple of things in your sharing that touched me, actually touched memories I had. And I was curious about your inner development when I was thinking about these two things. One was, you're absolutely right. I remember from ballet class, especially, the number of male dancers in there was maybe 1 to 20 or 50. It was disproportionately small, and I always was quite aware and actually very appreciative. I felt that these souls, these in male bodies that were in these classes, were getting a chance to develop a side of them that other boys were not. There was something balancing that was going on by being in that kind of genre. And I don't mean to put things in boxes, but dance does require a certain level of grace and gentleness and subtlety. And I don't know if you felt it was starting to develop internally, a different side of you. And that connects to your mentioning Tai Chi as well, because I remember in college, when I would sort of practice on my own in a room, and there was another young man who would come in, clearly very, very fit, but he practiced Tai Chi. And again, I felt this vibration from him, even though he was physically very fit. There was this incredibly soft and gentle vibration coming from him through the discipline he was practicing. And I wonder if you felt that being engaged in those kinds of disciplines that demand those kinds of qualities, if they affected your development internally as a person, did they help to bring out a different side of you?
I think yeah, absolutely. I think there are times when you can lose the sense of yourself or your physicality when you're moving. You don't, certainly once you've rehearsed a dance and you've got to a point where it's you know, it's known so well to you that you don't need to think about every step. You don't need to even think about the musicality because you're so familiar. And it's a really beautiful place to get to, because then you maybe all you need to think about is imagery or texture, or and so it draws you into a sort of state which is much more sensitive to understanding that many things can happen with when we're concentrated and that thought is very clear. And I guess that was just the gateway for me, you know, that kind of went, oh, okay, I can understand that this experience, and I didn't know it at the time when I first had those experiences. How can I find this more often? You know, what's the way that I can sort of get to that? Because sometimes you'd have the experience, then you go, okay, can I do that again? And of course, you try to do it again, and it wouldn't happen. And it's and meditation for me was the method to start to move into a way that I could access that more often. And yes, so I think you're right. You know, dance helped draw my attention towards those experiences initially, and then the desire to try and find, can I repeat those experiences? And meditation then started to sort of help, you know, bring that into a more consistent sort of pattern in my life.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
I'm hoping I have one more question, but we'll see if I for you. First, I have to say I'm very honored to be in your company. You know, listening to your journey, you have such a depth of experience, and now you're an educator. You've worked in leadership with dancers, you know, and I think about dance at this time, and there's so much about the wow factor, the show. So often, and there's a joke, if Anna Pavlova, you know, if she tried to audition for a company today, she would not get in, you know, because she doesn't have the right physique, she doesn't have the flexibility, she's not the right, you know, weight, none of it. But what she did have was this quality about her. And as an educator, where, you know, how do you find first you feel that's important to communicate to those moving into the world of movement, that quality piece that's beyond the outer show, like how to maintain the integrity of that experience that you just described for yourself? How do you communicate that as an educator in movement?
I think it's really important. I think sometimes, you know, I will talk to the students that I work with, you know, you thought that you were coming into this program just to learn about what to do physically, but actually we have many dancers around the world that are extremely proficient, you know, and can do physically, they can do amazing things. But what you're also going to learn here is about how you can focus your mind and what that can do, because you're right with Anna Pavlova or you know, Nureyev and many of those great artists, they could literally just walk on stage and the audience focus is, wow, okay, you know, without even moving, because it's such an embodied experience for them. And we talk about the focus of the mind a lot with the students, because it can be that thing that you know, identifies them next to another dancer that maybe doesn't have it, okay, and doesn't have that same sort of focus. And I was saying to Gabrielle before we went online that there are many courses now that tertiary dance courses that include meditation, because they do recognize that what you can do, while some of those courses might be there just about stress management, but also what can happen with an artist when they can utilize and draw on how they can access power and focus through their mind is you know, is another level, and I do believe it can really have a sort of interactive experience with the audience. I certainly have that experience a lot when I see an artist that imaginatively is very sort of powerful. I'm drawn in to understand more about that, and we talk about that capacity with students as well. It's you know, it's a practice that takes some time to develop, but yeah, it's very important. It's very important.
Yes, you mentioned earlier too about, you know, the whole science of neurotransmitters now, and how you psych the brain into a state where you're visualizing your movements and so on, and moves into your unconsciousness. But it sounded to me, Jaime, like you were exploring that terrain from a very early age, and perhaps, you know, that might have been your pull to it so early at 7 years of age. Can you just talk a little bit about that whole aspect of your practice of I guess getting yourself into the presence, into the right zone, as you perform and before you perform?
I will. I do have that video that we can show. We can do an overlay if that works for you. I can certainly run through a process that I go through before performances. Yeah.
Let's do that. We'll switch to that then and come back.
Great.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, so in the lead up to dance performances, there are two main components that I focus on in the 2 hours prior to the show. And they are my physical and mental readiness for the performance. In general, the physical preparation in a dance company is often done together in a group, whilst the mental preparedness is extremely varied and mostly individual. Mental preparation that I've found very helpful over the past 35 years is meditation. At around 1 hour before the performance, just after the group physical warm-up, I'll find a quiet space in the theatre for this practice. It has changed the course of my life and has certainly been adapted many different times and ways over the years. However, the basic structures will remain pretty much the same. Basic approach is to go into the body to enable me to go beyond the body. By going into the body, what I do is I slowly scan through the body as if I'm inside it, starting from my feet and moving up towards the tip of my head. When I come across any pain or tightness, tension or niggling injury in my mind, I visualize going into that area and filling that space with my awareness. To see it, that is to visualize it and to fill this space with my awareness. This can help to focus my mind on accepting the blockage for what it is in the moment. A yoga teacher once said to me, we go into the body to forget the body. The screening process provides a gateway for me to let go of this blockage, to free up what is being held and the energy then can start flowing again. Much of the research into chronic pain suggests that the pain itself is held predominantly in the mind, particularly in the way that we forward project our concern about pain. Meditation really helps to provide a gap in the stream of thoughts, and that in that gap I can experience a refreshing stillness. To go further into this refreshing stillness, I begin to focus on my breath. The breathing techniques I use vary and change a great deal, but mostly are centered on breathing in, a breath hold, and then a slow exhalation. A slow exhalation is a very effective way to steady the heart rate and calm the mind. It's a technique I often use during performances to move quickly into recovery mode after rigorous sections of the dance. At this stage in the meditation process, my mind is sufficiently detached for me to visualize sections of the coming performance. In this process, and this process is known as cognitive rehearsal, I do see myself performing. I might see different sections of the performance or different movements that I'm doing, but it's always focused on the performance that's coming up. And particularly what I like to see is, and what I convince myself of seeing, is that I like to see perfect effort in that performance. When I mean perfect effort, I mean that everything is just right. There's not too much, or there's not too little, but just the right amount of focus and effort. I focus on effort because, in my experience, if the effort is just right, then the rehearsed movements, their quality, the dynamics, the texture, the musicality, and the imaginative processes connecting the whole performance together will be coordinated into a single experience. It can be like a single thread that runs all the way through the performance. And in that way, my mind becomes calmer as I perform. I'm alert, I'm ready, I'm able to adapt and change and adjust, because every live performance is unique. But that calmness that I feel, and the centeredness that I feel in my mind, allows me to be able to do that and pivot quickly and change and adapt and move into different sections. So with this focus on perfect effort, I see these images and moving images of the performance and focus on that. The process of this that I practice is called cognitive rehearsal, and it's well known to sports scientists. It has been shown to significantly improve an athlete's performance. And during the process of cognitive rehearsal, I'll usually repeat some affirmations. An example of which might be, this performance will be my best for today. Whatever will happen in the coming performance is already accepted, or everything is perfectly unfolding as it should be. From this point in my meditation, I'll focus on visualizing a single point of light on the screen of my mind. This will bring a deep sense of stillness. I visualize sending light into the area of the stage and the auditorium and beyond. I will sit within this light for some period of time, but then I realize that as I need to bring myself out, I'll start to slowly move again. And some of these movements I'll do and I stand up, and I'll either shake or swing my arms and get the energy moving again. But the whole time I still have this sense that the resonance of that experience in the meditation is still with me. So I feel that the blood is moving through my body, my blood pressure is right, my heart rate is coming up a little bit again, but internally, my mind is still in that sort of calm state. In this way, each performance has been an opportunity for me to go on a journey I have a strong intrinsic reason to meditate, as I know it helps me to perform better. And what do I mean by better? Well, better than being overrun with concerns outside of my role, outside of the things I can change. There are many things that I cannot change, and being aware of this gives me the experience of being more present in the things that I can change and that I am in control of. So meditation has precisely been able to help me to drop certain types of contraction. Contraction is a word that is used in Zen to identify thoughts that limit or minimize the sense of the self. In reducing this contraction, ideas about who I am open up in ways that allow me to experience much more expansive self. It's refreshing, and as it always was, in the same moment. And that's generally the process that I use before each performance.
Jaime, that's what an amazing description. I really felt I was going on that journey with you, and yeah, very much. I could really feel what you were imparting there, and that image of the vase, and noting that it was kind of cleaning out. It was very murky in the beginning of your meditation, how symbolically and physically it was cleaning out. And the stills of you in action, formidable, really. What a formidable artistry you have over dance and with dance. So, and it allowed me to see quite clearly, actually, the connection between that your inner world and your outer expression, and how you enabled to refine both, I guess. So that was what I was sensing. You're refining your outer world expression, but then that reflection back, it's like a cycle, I guess, going back in and seeing how that had rearranged your inner world. And your sense of composure coming through very clearly, like things that you can control and the things that you can't, and you're really focusing on what you can do, so that you stay very present.
I think particularly for performers, there's a very, with all performers, there's a very genuine sort of intention to give something to the audience, which is a beautiful thing in itself. It's just that sometimes we can become very concerned about, okay, how is that going to be received? And the meditation has really sort of helped me understand that it will be received as it's received, and we just have to let go of our I guess concern about how that's going to be received, because if I'm always thinking about how that's going to be received, then first of all, I'm not in myself, I'm not in my body, I'm thinking outside of that, and also I'm trying to sort of understand something that's as I said, outside of my control, and everybody comes to see a performance with their own sort of background and their own experiences and their own reasons why they're there, and we can't sort of understand all of those. So I think many performers, it's one of our areas that we need to sort of find ways to sort of deal with, and meditation's been really helpful for me in that way. And I do think it's like, performance is a little bit like an allegory of life, in the sense that we the best thing to do for us is to go through with the best intentions, and to be focused on what we can do to make the best. If we become attached to everything that's outside of that, then it distracts us. It pulls us into what Zen would call contraction, limiting thoughts. It limits us. It limits our impression of ourselves, etc. Yeah.
It's remarkable, Jaime. I'm sending you my congratulations for your continued success as a teacher of dance now, but also celebrating your achievements, what you've done in your life. It's been a wonderful contribution to the world, and And our thanks for sharing them with us.
Thank you.
And loving the way that you brought in the philosophy of it all as well. So thank you.
Pleasure.
But I'm going to move over to
Yes.
Judi now, and I'd love to introduce a little bit more to you about Judi. And she also has a dance background. Judi describes herself as of Caribbean Polish descent. And she made an effort to tell me about that. And from this beginning, she says that it seems she was destined to always seek out the blending of different worlds. So that's what of Caribbean Polish descent means in this context. And her introduction to the world of movement also started with a preschool ballet class. And dance consumed her life for the years that followed, although she says, and I find this hard to believe, but she says she was always a bit of a bull in a china shop. Now, I only know Judi as an incredibly graceful, physically graceful person in action. So anyway, this is her description, a bit of a bull in a china shop due to her love of athletics as well. And then in her late teens, looking for work, Judi answered an ad to a new fitness studio in Calgary that was on the hunt for fitness instructors. Now, Judi auditioned, and she notes that the audition almost did her in. But she did get the job, and we're pleased about that. So for Judi, choreography-based group fitness classes seemed like the perfect blend of grace and athleticism. And over 3 decades later, she never bores from the rush of challenging both body and mind. Going back to her late 20s, Judi embarked on a spiritual study, which she continues to this day. Now, I don't know if any of our viewers have ever participated in a fitness session, otherwise known as a boot camp in this part of the world, but I have, and I did enjoy it, but I couldn't say that it was a contemplative experience, and I certainly wasn't in a contemplative environment. Yet Judi has a different experience of this. She says that although it may seem that the intensity and noisiness of fitness and the stillness and silence of contemplation are incompatible, she finds that the opposite is true, that they actually enhance each other and create a sense of well-being when integrated. So back to her parentage now, she says, blame it on my parentage, but fitness for me has become that constant pursuit of aligning body, mind, and spirit. So Judi, I love the way that fitness and stillness is an and experience for you, rather than an either or experience. So it's lovely to have you with us. So tell us more about your movement and meditation story.
Thank you so much, Gabrielle. Delighted to be here. And, as I was thinking about all of this, the scenes that were coming into my mind that really touched this love of integration all actually had to do with running, which is funny because I'm not really a runner, but it had to do with running, that kind of movement, as you said, that athletic movement. And the first one was I was a very young, I was in high school and I was waiting for the bus in Oakland, California, USA, on my way to a dance class, and just waiting on, and I saw this young man go running by. He was just out for a jog. But the quality, I know this sounds strange, it's actually imprinted on my memory. The quality with which he was running, it was so, there was such a sense of grace and self-mastery. He was clearly very fit to be able to run that way, but the grace and self-mastery just really, that always touched me when I would see certain qualities in motion. Incredible athleticism, but with such grace and ease. It always really touched me. So that stayed with me. And then the second was a story, I think it's about Yogananda, Paramhansa Yogananda, and he was seen running for the train. And someone stopped him and said, "You're such a deep yogi. How can you possibly be running?" It just felt these were at odds. A yogi should not be running. And he said, "For me not to run for the train would be senseless because I will miss the train if I don't run for it. I'm late. But while I'm running for the train doesn't mean I lose my stage as a yogi." And again, that really touched me. Again, it was that integration. And the third story was my own personal experience. It was actually when I was a teenager and was doing track and field, and I was involved in sprinting. And when we used to sprint, our coach would always tell us, you know, when you're at the starting block, before you get down into that famous start position, keep shaking the body, keep it moving, keep those muscles limber, keep moving. So you'll notice at the beginning of a sprint race, especially, the athletes are jumping and shaking because they're going to go from 0 to 100 in very little time. So we were trained, you know, keep those muscles limber, shake around. So if you scanned down the start line and looked at each runner, you know, they would be doing that. And then you'd come to Judi, and Judi would be absolutely still. There was just this instinct or this deep pull to go, and I didn't know anything about meditation or anything, but just to go very deep inside and become very, very quiet before I was to get into the starting block. So this was the opposite of what I had been instructed to do, but there was such a strong pull to become very silent. And of course you get into the block, get set, ready, go, etc. And the idea is you're like a spring, a coiled spring that had been just, you know, made ready to launch. So you'd launch out, but that silence seems so connected to that burst of energy. So there was always this constant blending of, I would say, not movement and meditation, but meditation and movement, of going into a certain state and allowing that to guide the expression, whether it was physical movement or we're also involved with music and singing and art, any of those, to allow that quiet state inside to inform the expression, to go outside of sound and action in order to come into sound and action from a place of quality. That just always struck me very deeply. And then it was interesting listening to Jaime talked about cognitive rehearsal, because in university, you know, I tried different areas of study and I landed in psychology. And the course I loved the most was cognitive psychology. I think because spirituality wasn't offered, that was the closest I could get. It explored how we understand our inner world so deeply. Eventually, until I was able to study spirituality, came to the Brahma Kumaris. And for many, you know, coming to spirituality, there's that image of sitting still in a cave. And so if I tell them, no, I'm still teaching fitness, they immediately assume it must be hatha yoga. In fact, I have no training actually in the hatha yoga course. Yes, Raj yoga, non-physical yoga, meditation, I do, but in hatha yoga, I mean, it's hundreds of hours. I have no training in hatha yoga, and I'm often asked to sub or teach hatha yoga courses. And if people see me stretching or something, they will often say, where do you teach yoga? And I don't know what that's about, and I've just surrendered. I now do teach hatha yoga because I'm constantly being put into these classes, and I always wondered, what's that about, you know, because that's actually not the type of class that I am trained to teach. It's more the rigorous, as Gabrielle was saying, the boot camp, the very energetic dance-based classes, choreography classes. And again, there's that wonderful feeling of coming from a place of stillness and letting that inform the quality of the movement. And so I was just recently at a beautiful silence retreat, and the room I was staying in had this plaque on the wall, a little plaque, and it was a quote by Rumi. And I think it really sort of summarized what this is all about for me, this integration. And the quote was, let the beauty of what you love be what you do. So let the beauty of what you love be what you do. for me, looking at what I love has been very clarified and refined coming into a spiritual practice. And all the things I love are invisible, which is very interesting, being in such a physically overt profession. The things I love, some would say, don't you love dance? And I love, Jaime touched on that. I loved experiencing this invisible thing inside and bringing it into expression. It's that invisible experience inside I actually love. And the modality happens to be dance, or it could be art, it could be music. So the things I love, really, there's three things that I'm cultivating. I feel pulled to cultivate that love for. And the first, which I hope for everyone, is love for self, that self-respect. That's really become the organizing principle of my life, is the development of self-respect. And when Jaime was so beautiful in how he was describing, that concern about how it's going to be received. What we usually call that actually is ego. That ego can be such an interference in that love. It's at the other end of the spectrum. I was very aware of that. Most fitness instructors, doesn't matter how many decades they've been teaching, they still get very nervous before they teach a class because of that. How is it going to be received? Are they going to like it? Are they going to like that quantity, that pursuit of quantity and approval? This ego. So the thing they love is well-being, bringing others onto the path of well-being, but that ego can interfere with the love. And I was very aware of that and really wanted to address it. So love for self is really freedom from ego. So that was one deep love. Second is love for truth. Some call it love for God, some call it love for good, but love for truth was very important. For benevolence was very important for me. I didn't want to be a destructive force in the world. And the third one was love of others, love for humanity. So they're all rather invisible, and in silence, they become very sharp, very refined. I can experience them very deeply. So, if I find I'm doing some sort of expression, maybe dance in front of a crowd, those three things have to be activated quietly inside before I start to move. That love for self, that liberation from ego has to be very active, that connection to truth. So let this be benevolent, what's about to happen, and that deep love for others, that others are taken into an experience that they find meaningful and useful on their journey. So it takes a second. The beauty of what I love becomes clear in silence. So going into that silence, connecting to those loves, and letting it inform the state I'm in, that state of being as I do something. Let it be what I do. So I loved this quote by Rumi and found it so powerful in summarizing that integration and how the inner world has really become the first piece for me. That if that isn't aligned properly, yeah, I could do something impressive, I suppose, but it won't hit those three targets. The beauty of what I love won't be present. The ego will be driving the show, not really connected to truth at all, more connected to those concerns, and really taking from the audience, that they like what I do, they approve of what I do, rather than giving. And I'll just end by remembering a moment at the spiritual headquarters in Madhuban. And I remember my sisters also with the practice, the Brahma Kumaris, and so we were doing a dance performance, and it was pretty athletic, usually, especially when the sisters dance, it's usually quite angelic. And this was like almost hip hop, and we weren't sure how it would be received, especially by the senior yogis who were all present. And it was during a very festive time of the season, Diwali. So we did this dance, and it started to be called the Happy Dance. And I remember doing it, and the first time turning around and seeing these beautiful, spiritual students, they actually liberated me from ego. There was no sense of performer and audience. We were together in this sort of spiritual experience, in which I felt very free to honor those three loves, and that they were supporting the honoring of those three loves. So it was so freeing. But they kept asking us to do this happy dance. And I remember the last time, all of the senior yogis, it's very unusual. Jaime might find this unusual, but they actually have them seated on the stage behind you. So you're performing with these so-called audience on the stage behind you. So seconds before we go on, and we're on either side of the stage, so we can't communicate to each other, they say, can you change the choreography so parts of it are facing the seniors? And we burst out laughing because, of course, it's impossible. We can't even communicate. We just said we will do our best. So, we were trying to signal each other, and the whole thing was falling apart. I mean, it was the worst performance of the dance we possibly ever could do. We were laughing through most of it. But again, there was that feeling that no one really cared, that they were just so enjoying the quality of joy and love and lightness, that it was by far the best so-called performance, even though technically it was the worst. And again, it was so liberating. There was the presence of those three loves. And to me, that's so important, why the silence, the spirituality has to be there before coming into any expression, for me to feel that it's a success, if you will. So that's some thoughts for me on meditation and movement.
Thanks, Judi. I can imagine that environment. In fact, I know that environment, and it's a very, in some ways, technically forgiving environment, isn't it? It's quite different from perhaps where you go and pay a ticket to watch a show, or to take a fitness class, or to see a ballet, where there's this level of performance that you just expect, and so I think the pressures are quite different in a way. But what I think it does, I think it shows the capacity for movement to be, that perhaps is a way that we'll engage in the future around movement, that it's a natural, if the inner world's there and sorted, then the outer expression takes care of itself. So a lovely demonstration of that, Judi, thank you. Jaime, any comment from you?
Yeah, that was lovely, Judi. I love the sort of crossovers that we talk about, and how that kind of weaves together. And I think it's, that it's a very sort of common thing for us to think about the outcomes of our actions. We have an intention to do something, and as performers, we have the intention to sort of communicate, to share, to maybe inspire imaginations or experiences and things like that. But the line is, and you also talked about this, Judi, is like that when we start to become concerned, are those intentions going to actually sort of give that experience to our audience? When we cross that line of thought, and then we become concerned about how they're going to see this, we start to see it from the other direction. That for me is the line that and you mentioned the ego. It starts to sort of get very mixed, and my vase of water starts to become very sort of cloudy, because I'm outside of myself, I start to become, maybe, I start to sense an attachment to, so what is the audience going to see with this, and is my performance going to be good, or and I give those sort of value judgments to what I'm doing, rather than just being what the best I can be. But I think it's a very sort of interesting line that can happen to us when we're in that, and for me personally, I think that's where performance has taught me a lot. And I'm sure in the situation in Mudaband, it teaches you a lot on different levels, because you're in the environment with those senior yogis, and so you're in a space where what the conventions are of that space, and they're not usually jumping around with a heightened sort of dance, but as you said, with the yogi running for the train, is that actually we can be centered, we can be continuous with our own state of mind, even though physically we may be very active. So it's possible to manage that, and then we get the benefits of the state of mind, but we also get the benefits of the physicality as well.
Mm-hmm. And the quality of life is enriched, isn't it, when we hold that integration, that my spiritual practice or my meditation isn't something that I do over here, but that it's integrated, and that my action reflects those beautiful natural qualities there that lie within us. Yes. And whether that movement is dance, or is in a fitness studio, or whether it's at work typing, or on the road, driving the machines that are involved in roadworks, or whatever it is, but coming into that whole process, or the thing around moving in my body, and the consciousness I hold. And I love the way both of you have touched on that so intimately and so clearly, that being your kind of your springboard. You move from that into the outer expression. Jaime, you were going to say something.
I think that when you started talking about the different people and their activities and things like that, and it's very common for us to start, or both Judi and I have sort of talked about this, that we will start with some sense of meditation first, and for me, before performance, but beginning of the day, that's that beautiful time when you can start that. And I do feel that it gives you a head start on things, and there's a certain sort of energetic or resonance of that experience, which you can then carry through your day, and maybe sort of dip back into, and things like that. So that experience, of working with meditation early is a terrific sort of way to sort of start with that. And then, of course, whether you're walking or dancing, or like you said, driving tractors, and whatever work you're doing, it can still sort of be an experience where you're physically and mentally sort of connected in that way.
Right. Have we got time to pitch a couple of questions to both of you? I think we have. Or Judi, is there a comment you'd like to make before I do that?
No, I think Jaime spoke beautifully about it, and really just to, again, mention this idea. You say, you're outside of yourself or losing yourself. And that to me is the point, is to be very connected to the self in a qualitative way. That's what spiritual means. It's not the physical, but this very qualitative experience of the self, and to hold that as I come into action. So if I'm ironing, I have this experience that I am a peaceful being. So as I'm ironing, I iron peacefully, and it actually becomes sacred, or a dance, these ordinary actions. So that's been the essence of the integration for me, is to use meditation to have a very qualitative experience of myself. And the early mornings is wonderful. And then how can I hold that as I come into, so can I still do burpees while being in that peaceful state?
And the answer is yes, of course.
That is my assignment.
But look, it's lovely. I mean, what a way to make the ordinary extraordinary, isn't it?
I agree. And I think, doing burpees or doing very sort of rigorous exercise, it does take over your whole experience. And my experience is that then I would use breathing and then a sort of dipping back into the meditative sort of experience, or that resonance that I feel, to bring my body and back into homeostasis, or back to sort of a calmer state. So that's certainly going to happen with dance. I'm going to get to a point where it's very vigorous, and my whole sort of focus is just about trying to get enough oxygen into my body. I come off stage and I'm breathing very heavily, but then with those sort of breathing techniques, and particularly breathing out slowly, exhaling slowly, will lower my blood pressure, will calm my heart rate very quickly, and then starting to bring my mind focus back into dipping back into that sort of experience that I've had with meditation, will stabilize myself very quickly before I can go back on stage. And I love that sort of tool or power that the meditative process can give to you. It's a really valuable thing to be able to sort of utilize.
Look, I'm going to pitch a first question to both of you, and feel free to either to answer it. Someone here is saying, I think that all performing arts, or all arts, transport people to a different place. How does movement help get people to a place where they want to be?
Sorry. Yeah, I'm not sure if it's actually true. It might just be in my own little mind, but I seem to feel that originally all artistic professions were in service to spirituality in ancient times, whether it was painting or singing or movement. They were actually used for a spiritual experience. And even they would speak of the muses, that it was coming, the inspirations were coming through spiritual mechanisms, and then they'd be able to deliver a spiritual experience to those who are viewing it or receiving it. And so I think for me, it kind of works both ways, that we kind of laugh sometimes, with the dance-based classes, that the only ones who really come are those who are able to leave their ego at the door. So they're already kind of launching onto the spiritual experience of expressing their true selves. And it's just so liberating for them to move beyond that self-consciousness into self-awareness, to connect to a deeper sense of themselves. So I think there's a lot of opportunity in any of the artistic expressions to step outside of this limited, very self-conscious sense of self, and into a more deeper connection of self-awareness.
I agree, Judi. I think that that one of the techniques that we use in dance to be very centered on what we're doing on stage and how we are thinking about the work, and maybe the texture or the narrative or the qualities that we're thinking about, and the deeper that we can go into those, I think the more there is the opportunity for the audience to be able to experience that. Whether the audience go to a better place or not, I think that's for the audience. That side of the experience is there for the audience to go on their own sort of imaginative journey. But I do think that dance is extremely good at being able to allow people to tap into their own imagination, because it's often, not always, but often a non-verbal presentation, and so without those verbal cues, you're just having to interpret a moving body, interpret what's happening in that sort of space. It just sort of opens up again a little bit like a gateway. It opens you up to interpretive parts of your own mind, and then I think that can also lead towards an imaginative response. But if the audience is taken to a better place or not, then I think actually that's part of their own sort of response. And
so it's an offering.
yeah. Yes, yeah.
What you're giving is an offering, and
yes,
yeah.
Yeah, and we
Here's
can't
another
force
one
people to take that.
There, that's right. It's on offer. This one is, I think you've touched on it a little bit anyway, but it's saying here that in these times of the perfect body, as a dancer or a fitness instructor, what is your relationship with your body like?
Yeah, I think this is a very tough one and a challenge in a way. I'm certainly, I'm much older now, so I have less concerns about that than what I did when I was younger. I think when I was younger, that was a stronger sort of pull of either what would be the right sort of look of the body, and then you get pulled into sort of the external, and then you come back and say, well, actually, it doesn't matter. I think being able to, as a dancer, being able to exercise well and do well-structured classes that give you different experiences all the way through different muscle groups, you start to get a sense of what feels right, and certainly variety is a very important component of that. But it's something that we, when I was teaching in Asia, we would work a lot with, and we would work a lot with the idea that actually it's about the experience that you have in your own body that leads you to having a better physicality, and the better physicality is the result of that internal experience. So just trying to sort of bring that balance back again, so it's not all about the how something looks, but actually it's about how it feels. Is the body serving you well for what you want to do? And if it's not, maybe we can then focus on particular exercises that will help that. Okay, that will improve that strength or improve that flexibility, so that you can then use the body to achieve that.
Thanks, Jaime. I'm sure it does change with age as well, doesn't it? Like, your whole relationship to your body.
Yes.
And your body changes. What about you, Judi? What's within that context of a fitness instructor, as well as, and your sense of spirituality, how do you view your body now?
Yeah, definitely. It's such a deep question. It is really that battle between ego and self-respect, because looking for that perfect body is really definitely an ego's category, that seeking of approval. And it was a huge part of the story when in dance school. Absolutely. And I remember being a young dancer, and we had a summer school, and we had a guest instructor come from the National Ballet School of Canada, and he brought one of his students with him because they had to use the time as well to rehearse for an upcoming show. Ironically, that student's name was Judi as well. And I remember we were watching her, and I mean, she was a stunning dancer, but I remember the first thing I noticed visually was she didn't look like your typical dancer visually. She was like solid, they usually lithe and thin, but she was solid. And I remember she, but she was so beautiful to watch. And I remember she came over after, which was the second shocking thing, is that she was so gracious with her time with us. She came over, and I was so struck by her, I'm going to say self-confidence, and I hope that people don't think I'm talking about arrogance, but she was extremely comfortable with herself. And so when we watched, she didn't mind us watching her, even though she was going to be corrected the entire time. And that's what the dance master does, is they just correct. She was corrected in front of us the entire time. She didn't look like your typical dancer. But what struck me deeply about Aja, I could feel inside, she was so comfortable with herself. And I say, whether it's dance or fitness, if you can spark that comfort with the self, the soul will actually figure out how to take care of the body and not damage the body. Challenge it, take care of it. And so in other words, it's driven from the inside out as well. But if it's from the outside in, I see so many people do damaging things to their body for the sake of that image and kind of miss the point, which is simply health and well-being. Or in dance, enjoyment of movement. So if that inner spark is there, that deep comfort, that self-respect, that love, again, you take care of all your resources, including the body, very well, and bring it, that pursuit of health and well-being is coming from a very healthy place inside.
Thank you. Another question: how do you see movement in the future? Here we are now, and we've talked a little bit about the history. You both referred to Anna Pavlova, and that she'd never be in dance now. She's got the wrong shaped body and so on. And the concepts around movement too, historically, we've touched on that a little bit. But moving into the future, the move word again, how do you see movement, dance, fitness, anything to do with movement in the future? Where's it going?
I think well, of course, we're projecting to the future, so we don't know. It's a difficult question. I've certainly noticed in the world of professional dance, we have moved to much more a large number of new techniques and techniques which have been identified to particular practitioners, and they will become very popular. So now it's very common for a particular practitioner to this is my technique, and I think that's in line with a lot of what's happening with online work, and that people are sort of moving towards becoming their own brand and their own identification of that. But along with that, there is a growing sort of sense and understanding about the capacity that we have mentally with our mind, and with and moving towards what we've been talking about, a sort of an approach which is going to include more spiritual aspects, just as a powerful tool to use with being able to have an improved performance, or an improved recovery, or an improved understanding of pain that's happening in their body, and so those sort of practices are increasing. Perhaps we're going to have a lot more sort of connection with technology and movement, and technology that can measure all of the biometrics that are happening within the body at the time, and so that could be a much more common place where we can measure that. We do that in sort of research. We look at dance, and we measure how the body is reacting through dance, but maybe that's going to be a much more individualistic experience with that. But I think if dance is moving towards a sort of space where we can incorporate the spiritual and the power of what we can do with our minds, then that's an exciting place to move to.
Mm-hmm. That's lovely. That kind of leads a little bit to this last question we've got here, and it's I remember in your little video of your meditation practice, Jaime, you talked about a still point of light, and that focus, and Judi, you've referenced that as well. And just looking at this question here, has your connection with the divine or a higher being, whatever you perceive that one to be, how has that changed the way you express yourself in movement? And has that being helped you express yourself differently in movement?
Yeah,
I guess
you know,
it's the usual question you'd ask dancers or people in the movement area, but you both touched on it, and let's unpack that a little more.
I do feel that actually was the starting point of movement. Actually, it was an expression of love for God, historically, and it is one of the, again, that Rumi quote, it's one of the loves I personally have, that idea of what would happen if you will, that connection with what was moving me, that I was connected to such a beautiful being, experiencing that connection as I move. And I'll just quickly tell a quick story around this. So there's something called the Yoga Show that's an international show, all the big yogis of the world, hatha yogis, etc., come together, and Adidas, Nike, all the big. And I remember we were also, the Brahma Kumaris were also involved. And one of the things we wanted to do was a demonstration on the stage of our yogic practice. Now, what does Raj Yoga look like? 30 minutes of that is not gonna really. So the rules for qualifying to be, to submit a request was that it could not be a dance performance. They did not want dance performances. But at that time, we had 5 dancers who were BKs, 5 dancers. And so we thought, we want to show this idea of meditation and movement. So it might look like a movement, a dance, but actually the idea was we're in connection with God as we're moving. That's what we wanted to demonstrate, Raj Yoga. But we were only 5, and the choreography ideally would be great with 6. So we recruited, someone had a friend and they recruited, and she was very spiritual, had her own relationship with God. And so we're on the stage and we got approved, by the way, and that's another story, but we're on the stage, we're doing this at the end, so it's like, wow, it's such a beautiful experience. And we said so much peace, but there's one of you in particular, every time we looked at you, at that one, we felt like they were just so in love with God. We would think of God. And it wasn't any of the BKs. It was that 6 But it was very beautiful, this idea that through movement and while connected, they were able to connect those who were watching into their own experience, which is a very uplifting experience for a soul to have. So, yeah, I think it can be a game changer, a yogi movement.
And no one's got primary rights over the divine, have they?
Yeah.
No, it's not been copyright. I love the research that I read about athletes that give over whether they're going to win the race or whether they're going to win the game to a higher source. And I love it because it not only allows them the freedom to perform their best, because they no longer take that sort of personal responsibility that it must be me that does it, but they can give that over and say, well, if it's going to be, it's going to be. So it's a very sort of liberating experience. And I agree with you, Judi, that sort of early expression of movement and things like that is about giving over and that sort of sense of love. And what it does to the individual is it relieves us of tension and stress and anxiety and pulling out of ourselves and all of the chaos that can happen in our mind, and we can just become very centered, and it's a beautiful gift. And so in that way, I think that's a to give an activity over to a higher source is of course for us personally is a very liberating experience, in the sense that we no longer feel attached to the result of what's going to happen. And and gives us the sort of space then to do the best that we can do. Gives us the space to be the best that we hope to be, and that's a beautiful gift.
Thank you for that. Very much appreciated those answers and the insights that you've been sharing. I'd like to suggest, Judi, that you take us into a meditation, a practice that you do that assists or accompanies you within your role as a fitness instructor.
Happy to.
Yeah, please.
I take a moment to allow the body to come into a state of rest, to slow down, and if it helps, I can take a breath in, and the magic is in the exhale, that slower release of air from the lungs. And that helps to slow everything down. And maybe another breath in. And again, that slower exhale. Perhaps even helping to dissolve hidden tension in the body. And then I allow the breath to continue as it will naturally on its own. And I become an observer of the breath, an observer of the entire body. It is a wonder. All the time, day and night, the lungs breathe, the heart beats, muscles flex, synapses fire, chemicals react. So much happening in this incredible instrument of expression, the body. What it can do. But an even greater wonder is me, the one observing this body. There are thousands and thousands of parts of this body. Muscles and tendons, bones and organs, cells. But you will not find in this body love, peace, kindness, gentleness, grace, compassion. Those aspects belong to me, the one expressing through this body. The most sought after resources in the world. Those qualities, they're found within me, the being. And so I shift my focus to that remarkable place behind the forehead, my inner world, and me seated in the center of that inner world. I, the being, tiny spark of life acting through this remarkable instrument of expression, the body. I determine the quality of that expression. I determine if this body walks peacefully. If I drive patiently. If I speak thoughtfully. This body is wonderful. But the greater wonder is the self. I give life to this body, and I give quality of life to this body. Taking even a second to go inside, remember the self and the beautiful qualities contained within me, unique to me, such that I become a unique form of expression in the world through this body. Om Shanti.
Thank you, Judi. Thank you for that. It was lovely to go on that meditation journey with you and really begin to deeply appreciate the intimate relationship between the self and the body, and what a rich resource the self is, and what a scarce resource in many ways those inner qualities are of peace, and in connecting that into our outer actions. Thank you. Well, my friends, it's moving into time to close, but before I do that, I wondered if there's any comment that either of you would like to make as we close out.
There's just one, the skills and capacities that were developed in Dancer have really served me a lot in my spiritual practice. The discipline, the concentration, focus on self is a long list. But the main one is this focus on alignment that is central to dance, aligning the body. And we often say what alignment is to the body, that awareness of alignment, that alignment in the body, that is what awareness is to the soul. So dance really brought me into a very subtle state of observing the alignment of the body. And that subtlety, that the capacity to observe at a subtle level has really been useful to me spiritually. In what awareness am I holding? Even to be aware of myself as a soul, a very subtle being, requires that same skill I needed in dance. So I really thank, even though I am not by any means, what I would call a dancer, but I appreciate being exposed to those skills and how they've really served me in the spiritual journey.
Fineness of the artistry of the outside and being able to apply it to the inside. Yeah, of course. Very refined. What about you, Jaime?
I just want to say lovely meditation, Judi. Thank you very much. It was beautiful and such an example of how naturally you moved into it and how naturally you spoke through that process. And it reminds me of something that I've been practicing a little bit internally, and that is thinking about my body as the small self, but my soul as being the expansive self. And just the difference, because of course when I can go into that meditative experience, I can be, my experience is very, very large, and expansive. And you know, when I just get caught up in my body, this kind of feeling is contracting in a way, and it brings me into a sort of different space. So it was beautiful to go through that with you. Thank you. And thank you, Gabrielle, for inviting me on. It's been a terrific experience for me. Thank you.
Yeah, look, a huge thanks to both of you, Judi and Jaime. It's been a pleasure to be in conversation with you and your willingness to be part of Youniverse. So thank you so much. And I've appreciated, you know, the sharing, listening to, you know, your deep insights that you've gained. And they are very deep insights that you've gained spiritually and physically on your movement journey, and how you've both articulated so clearly that parallel spiritual journey. So it's been a rich conversation, a wonderful conversation. So on behalf of Youniverse, our thanks and blessings and love to both of you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And a pleasure to be in conversation with you, Jaime. Really, you speak beautifully, articulate beautifully the inner journey.
Likewise, likewise.
So viewers, you might like to browse our online bookshop Eternity Inc., which has a full online range of books on self-empowerment and spirituality, always at not-for-profit prices. And you'll see their web address on the takeaway slide. And if you'd like to subscribe to Open Your Eyes to the Youniverse so that you can receive monthly updates, then please email us at special.events.au.brahmakumaris.org. And now finally, I'd like to tell you about our next episode of Youniverse. We'll be in the field with Dr. Tamazin Ramsey, and she'll be talking with us about yogic farming. That's right, we're in the field with the tomatoes, the cabbages, the carrots, and the soil quality. Did you know that crops can grow healthily using the power of positive vibes from your own mind? Nurturing positive vibrations also impacts your body, your health, and your profession as well. So join us with Dr. Tamazin Ramsey on Youniverse next month as she discusses her field research on yogic farming. And that's on Saturday, the 22nd of October at 6 p.m. AEDT. And so that's daylight saving time. And now, so until we see you again in October, may you remain aware of your inner world and allow it to enrich your outer expression. Om Shanti.